بيت الخلافة قام يا خلاني، صرح مهيب ثابت الأركان، حصن حصين لا يضام نزيله، فاسعوا بعزم صادق الوجدان.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأهلا بكم في النشرة الأسبوعية الخاصة ببعض أنشطة أمير المؤمنين نصره الله في الأيام القليلة الماضية، حيث سنقدم لكم اليوم أبرز ما جاء في منتدى السلام الوطني، والذي تزامن أيضا مع افتتاح المبنى الإداري الجديد لمجمع مسجد بيت الفتوح، وبالإضافة إلى إلقائه الخطاب الرئيس في هذا الحدث. التقى حضرته عددا من كبار الشخصيات. ويوم الأحد 5 من مارس الجاري التقى حضرته نصره الله الوفود الدولية التي سافرت إلى لندن لحضور مؤتمر السلام.
The site of London's largest mosque, the spiritual and cultural centre of the Ahmadiyya community in Europe, engulfed by flames.
जैसा कि मैंने बताया कि अफसोस तो नुकसान पर होता है, एक फितरी अमर है, लेकिन अफसोस सर पर सवार नहीं कर लिया जाता।
You can see behind me those big black billowing smoke coming out of the Bayt al-Futuh mosque. Now this is one of the biggest mosques in Western Europe apparently. It's part of the Ahmadiyya sect of Islam.
और अगर ये आजमाइश है तो अल्लाह ताला हमें इसमें से भी कामयाबी से गुजारे और अपने इनामात पहले से बढ़कर अता फरमाए।
Fire which began just before midday and spread rapidly, destroying administration buildings.
बाद मुसलमानों का ये रवैया कि खुशी मना रहे हैं और सुबहान अल्लाह पढ़ रहे हैं। ठीक है, आज ये सुबहान अल्लाह इस्तेदा के रंग में और अल्लाह ताला की गैरत भड़काने के लिए पढ़ रहे हैं तो पढ़ें, लेकिन इंशाअल्लाह जल्द ही इससे बेहतर और ख़ूबसूरत तामीर करके हम हकीकी सुबहान अल्लाह पढ़ेंगे और माशाअल्लाह ही पढ़ेंगे।
खुदाए वाहिद के नाम पर एक अब इसमें मस्जिद बनाएंगे हम।
بعد مرور حوالي 8 أعوام على نشوب هذا الحريق المدمر، وبالتحديد في 4 مارس الجاري، افتتح بحمد الله تعالى حضرة خليفة المسيح الخامس المبنى الإداري الجديد لمجمع مسجد بيت الفتوح.
मालिकुल मुल्क है तो खुदाए ज़मन, कैसे शुक्रो सना तेरी हो ज़ुल्मनन। मालिकुल मुल्क है तो खुदाए ज़मन, उदखुलू सुज्जदन उदखुलो सुजदन उदखुलो सुजदन उदखुलो सुजदन.
بعد إزاحة الستار عن اللوحة التذكارية إيذاناً بافتتاح المبنى الجديد، وبعد إمامة الصلاة، التقى أمير المؤمنين بعدد من الضيوف وكبار الشخصيات.
Thank you for coming here on our function.
I'm the ambassador of AT to the UK.
AT?
Yes.
How is your country?
Could be better.
Yes.
Could be better. Thank you.
His Holiness, it's a pleasure to see you again. Paul Scully, Minister for Technology and Minister for London, as well as neighbouring MP. Lovely to see you as always.
I know you very well.
My name is Leroy Scott and I'm the Mayor of Whitehill and Borden over in Hampshire.
Our area, almost. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
And I know you, I think.
Good evening, sir. Virendra Sharma, Member of Parliament for Ealing South.
I know you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
وبعد اللقاء الجماعي أتيحت الفرصة للسيدة باربرا هوفمان الحائزة على جائزة الأحمدية للنهوض بالسلام لعام 2019 للقاء أمير المؤمنين.
How's life?
Life is a bit hard in the last few months because in Mozambique we have floods and cyclones. There are thousands, 10,000, 100,000 of people, they lost their homes. They were displaced due to the floods.
Is government providing them any makeshift arrangement?
We're trying to help them with food as much as we can. With food, and we had people housed at our centres.
The main problem is food or shelter?
Basic is food. Shelter is number 2. It is an honor for
Thank you very much.
To meet you and to be able to exchange.
Thank you for accepting our offer.
كما أتيحت الفرصة أيضاً للسيد تاداتوشي أكيبا الفائز بجائزة الأحمدية للنهوض بالسلام لعام 2022 للقاء أمير المؤمنين.
I'm here to represent Hiroshima and also Hibakusha, that's a Japanese word for the survivors of the atomic bombings. And since I was the mayor for 12 years, and I worked with them to bring peace and to abolish nuclear weapons. And I believe exactly what you have been doing. And it's an honor.
I have been to Hiroshima, yes.
Yes, I saw your picture.
Yes. And even I wrote on the book my comments and praised the people of Hiroshima, how they rebuilt their city.
Yes. Thank you very much.
It's amazing.
And with your endorsement of Hiroshima and with just us working together, I'm hoping that the war in Ukraine will end soon, and also that nuclear weapons will not be used.
Yes, if only people get sense.
Yes.
So it all depends on our leaders.
That's right.
So if you can convince them to take sense.
On this occasion, I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Ahmadiyya community for denouncing the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 10th, 1945.
Yes.
You were perhaps the first major organization and among the major leaders to do so publicly. And I believe that means a great deal to people.
Yes. We are still not trying to get lesson from it.
That's right.
And again, trying to eradicate the life from the face of the earth.
بعد ذلك أتيحت الفرصة لزياد أبو لطيف عضو البرلمان الكندي الذي سافر لحضور ندوة السلام لمقابلة أمير المؤمنين.
Alhamdulillah, everything good. And, thank you for.
It seems as if you are very close to Ahmadis. You are using all our terminology, all our prayers.
Yeah, indeed, it's just the message of Ahmadiyya, of peace, and spreading that message to the world is also mine.
But people, they are not trying to pay heed to it.
They will.
They will, during our generation or next generation.
We need to be persistent.
It all depends on you, the politicians.
Happy to serve with your blessing.
We have been trying our best, but now the ball is in your court.
Yes, we need everyone. I think that politics in the West is also we call it bottom up, from base all the way to the head. People have the influence, the ability to influence the political community to do so.
وخلال الاجتماع أبلغ أمير المؤمنين أن السيد أبو لطيف عضو أيضاً في لجنة حقوق الإنسان الكندية.
Discharge human rights is not an easy job.
Yeah, it's very distinguished. I was on Foreign Affairs twice. Also, I was the Shadow Minister for International Development. So I did my tour from Africa to all the way to Bangladesh, trying to to spread the message.
Unfortunately, there was a mishap there in Bangladesh yesterday.
Yeah, I heard. I can't believe that 88 million people country have a fear of 50,000 people. It doesn't make sense.
It was the height of brutality. They killed one of our the member and injured quite a number of them. Yeah. Some of them are very seriously injured. They are hospitalized. When everything is done, now they have deployed a huge number of military and police and all these forces. What is the use of that now?
It's I mean, again, it's simple.
They burned quite a number of our houses.
Simple to have the fear of 50,000 people. There's something fundamental there in the mentality and the way they are approaching human rights and people's.
No, their police did take action, but it was a delayed action. Had they been taken 2 hours earlier, it would not have happened.
بعد 7 مساء بدأ في القاعة حفل الاستقبال الرسمي بمناسبة افتتاح المسجد وندوة السلام الوطنية، وحضره مئات الضيوف من عشرات البلدان. بعد التلاوة وكلمات كبار الشخصيات، قدم أمير المؤمنين نصره الله جائزة الجماعة الأحمدية للنهوض بالسلام، وكانت الفائزة لعام 2019 السيدة باربرا هوفمان مؤسسة أيسم، وهي مؤسسة خيرية تعنى بالأطفال الذين يتمتهم الحروب. وأما الفائز في جائزة النهوض بالسلام لعام 2022 فهو الدكتور تاداتوشي أكيبا من اليابان لجهوده في تقديم مقترحات عملية لنزع السلاح النووي.
You were one of the first in the world to recognize and protest nuclear weapons inhumanity and evilness back on August 10th, 1945. The second caliph declared on that day that it is our religious and moral duty to proclaim to the whole world that we do not consider lawful such bloodshed. Belatedly, the world finally came to the same conclusion when the Treaty on the Prevention of Nuclear Weapons, TPNW, took legal effect on January 22, 2021. Words of your holiness give us direction. Regardless of its effect, we shall never give up our efforts to promote peace and justice suddenly.
وخلال الخطاب الرئيس سلط أمير المؤمنين أيده الله تعالى بنصره العزيز الضوء على الغرض الحقيقي للمساجد.
It is essential to note that Muslims are commanded to build their mosques in the direction of the holy Kaaba, the sacred house of Mecca, and to worship towards it. Yet, it is not enough to merely turn one's physical direction towards the holy Kaaba. Rather, Muslims and their mosques must fulfill the objectives of the Kaaba, outlined in chapter 3, verse 98 of the Holy Quran, where it states that whosoever enters the sacred house of Allah enters peace. This Quranic verse means that a true Muslim, upon entering a mosque, shall himself enter a state of peace and, by fulfilling the rights and commands of God, prove a beacon of peace and security for others. All our mosques spiritually mirror the holy Kaaba, wherein they serve not only as an abode of worshipping God Almighty, but are also a means of fulfilling the rights of mankind and establishing peace in the world. Just a few days ago marked the first anniversary of the war in Ukraine, and sadly, there is no sign of how or when the war will end. Nonetheless, this has not stopped certain political leaders from stating that once the war does end, Russia should be subjected to extreme sanctions and made to pay for its actions. Recently, A column by the journalist Matthew Paris was published in the Times, stating that such statements in advance of any meaningful peace talks are ill-judged and serve only to further inflame a volatile situation and reduce the chances of a peaceful settlement. The columnist wrote that political leaders should be above seeking short-term media acclaim and recognize, as he puts it, that the words spoken now can cast long shadows across a future terrain of which we are still ignorant. He writes that now is not the time to speak of reparations from a defeated Russia or to call for Nuremberg-style war crimes tribunals. I believe he is right to serve this warning. What incentive will Russia and its leaders have to cease hostilities if they know that their withdrawal will lead to their certain ruin? As I have said, Islamic teachings require for every effort to be made to bring peaceful solution to a conflict. For this reason, I believe it is essential to keep the channels of communication open and to strive to find mutually acceptable terms of agreement. If, however, the aggressor remains bent on causing misery and destruction and refuses to withdraw, Islam teaches that other nations should join together as one and use proportionate and necessary force to end the cruelties. The objective of the intervening parties must remain at all times to establish peace instead of seeking revenge or humiliating the aggressor. Nor should the underlying intention ever be to line one's pockets or to exploit the conflict to advance Western interests. Otherwise, those who have been demeaned will undoubtedly harbor a sense of injustice and resentment. Such frustrations are bound to eventually boil over and lead to further conflict, and so the cycle of incessant violence will continue to rotate with ever greater fury. Regrettably, as the columnist noted, rather than acting wisely, certain leaders and officials are making statements or pledges that serve only to pour petrol on the fire. Instead of helping to end the war, their comments reduce the long-term chances of peace. The world is well versed in supporting victims and those suffering injustice, as is the case with the Ukrainian nation at this time. Yet, it may surprise you to hear that Islam teaches Muslims to help not only the victim of the persecuted, but also the perpetrator and oppressor. Of course, this does not mean you provide the aggressor with the means of freedom to inflict further cruelties. Rather, to help an aggressor means to stop them from committing further brutalities and injustice. Whatever wrongs are being committed by the Russian state, we must keep in mind the broader picture that if the war is not brought to an end, it will lead to a deepening global crisis with potentially catastrophic results. Opposing blocs will become further entrenched. Hatreds will become even more deeply rooted, increasing the likelihood of a world war. Hence, as they continue to support Ukraine as it defends itself, world powers should also be making every possible effort to end the war through peace talks and good faith negotiations. Otherwise, I fear the war will spread beyond Europe and eastwards towards Asia, and who knows where it will stop.
I think the Peace Symposium was very impressive, especially what His Holiness said about the war in Ukraine, about the relation to the Quran, the Holy Quran, and what governments should do and should not do. So helping the country that was attacked, Ukraine, yes, but not in such a way that it will only fuel the conflict. And that now is not the time to talk about reparations and other aspects, sanctions after the war. Now is not the time. I think those were wise words.
Words from His Holiness, which are very spot on, emphasising the need for governments, for societies, for people to have the focus on peace. And it was interesting and refreshing that he is not a politician, he's a religious leader. He didn't hold back in his comments. He was very clear and quite blunt about, the need for countries to have peace, and, for example, in the future, not have the Ukraine and Russia one side trying to get back on the other, and for countries to have proportionate force in the support that they provide for the Ukraine.
It was a really important message. What I found quite impressive was that he was able to talk about stuff that's somewhat unorthodox and outside of the Overton window, but still very much true and important. So when it comes to NATO's encroachment on Europe and how he gave a context and a backstory behind the Russian war that a lot of people a lot of politicians, a lot of people elected like myself, a lot of journalists would be somewhat fearful of talking about. And he being a holy figure doesn't have those same concerns or limitations or fears that others would. And he brought it up in the right context as well, without trying to excuse Russia's aggression. It was a really quite cool speech, giving a really an encompassing perspective of the whole situation. That's important.
His Holiness spoke very movingly about particularly the war in Russia and Ukraine. I think I was struck by the admirable mercy that he showed for the Russians as well as the Ukrainians. I think it can be very easy to demonize one group and to create an artificial polarization when it comes to war, but he spoke with kindness and about moderating our defense of ourselves to purely defensive actions.
His Holiness just gave an amazing speech, which is very much into the Muslim faith, but also for non-Muslim people. It's very relevant, very important, because he says basically that true people, true believers and true people from God need to unite without any compromise on their religious beliefs, still getting together to work for harmony and peace. And this I think is a message from a man from God.
The end speech was from His Holiness was just amazing, and I think chimes in very well with my own thoughts about the fact that you shouldn't meet aggression with aggression, because you're making yourself the aggressor again. So, and I think that message which ran through his speech was just spot on. We share a common humanity, that actually we don't meet aggression with aggression, that that to me was the powerful message coming out of that, and it's one that I shall repeat. I shall tell people about what I've heard this evening with great joy.
I remember His Holiness was quite pessimistic 4 years ago. I think much of what he feared then has now come to pass, and it is quite a sobering message, and really the need. You can't resolve things by war.
I found his comments on the, how can I put this, the talking of Russia and the Ukraine situation, and how threatening dire consequences before peace has even begun is certainly, there's a certain logic to that. So sort of, if you've got nothing to lose, then why would you ever stop? So that was a very interesting perspective. It's not one I'd heard before.
That His Holiness always talks about peace and makes it a key issue of his message to the community and the world, I think is so important. We need more people with the status of His Holiness to get that message, and we politicians should listen to him. The theme that he was talking about was the foundation of true peace, and I think he was linking it to how we behave and how we think and how we treat other people. He was also talking about actual events in the world today, and it's essentially challenging us to do more. I was very fortunate. I was sitting next to His Holiness this evening, and I had a long chat with him about many things. But he said after his speech to me, "Now the ball's in your court." So I think what he meant was politicians have got to work ever harder in whatever capacity that we have to make the argument for peace.
For me, the speech of your Khalifa was something special, because I was born in Ukraine, and that is very close to me what he was saying about humanity, about that humanity first, that we need to do something to stop all these brutalities, and that for me that is another proof that you are not only concentrated about your own problems, about your own issues, one country or whatever, but you are just thinking about the whole world, and that is really great. That love for everyone, hated for none.
وفي اليوم التالي يوم الأحد 5 من مارس آذار الجاري التقى حضرة خليفة المسيح الخامس أيده الله تعالى بنصره العزيز 10 وفود دولية تضم أكاديميين وإعلاميين ونشطاء في حقوق الإنسان، وقد سافروا إلى لندن لحضور منتدى السلام. وكان ممن تشرف بلقاء أمير المؤمنين وفد من منظمة الأديان الدولية من أجل السلام، بالإضافة إلى وفود من بلجيكا وإيطاليا والبرتغال وإسبانيا وفرنسا والنرويج وهولندا واليونان وسويسرا.
I've been very touched by his speech yesterday, namely when he told us about the importance of feeling compassion, not just toward victims but also towards perpetrators. I think this is a very strong and challenging message that can be very helpful to build a culture of peace all over the world. It's not so usual to see to listen, to hear this kind of message, and I think we felt that His Holiness speaks from his heart. He speaks about something that he lives deep inside himself. And that gives authority to someone to speak like that.
Oh, very nice. Khalifa is a good person and so friendly, and all the same time so very spiritual man, and very have a good knowledge of the problems of the world.
The discussion for last night and his speech was so important, and I hope that the press will speak about that, about his feeling about the war, and we see that even if he is a religious leader, but he knows about the world and the real fact in the world, and he gave not only religious a solution. He put the religion to help how to give a big decision. And I think that all the leaders like Putin, Zelensky, Macron, they have to, even if we speak of, for example, in France, separation between religion and the state, but to hear them as a philosopher, as leader, is so important. And we have to hear them, because he was not against the war or something, no. He knows the reality, but he said to people, but be careful. And that is so important to say to the leader, don't go over a certain border. The consequences will be very dangerous for that, and it's so important.
بهذا وصلنا إلى ختام نشرتنا، ولمزيد من المعلومات والأخبار يرجى متابعتنا على العناوين الظاهرة أسفل الشاشة. دمتم في رعاية الله وحفظه، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
بيت الخلافة قام يا خلاني